Okay, this segment it's about moving to Kansas City and Metro Christian Fellowship that's there, where we attended for 4 years. I lived in Kansas City for 7. Anyway, I had the dream I had where I met the 3 people. The second person was my wife, who Lori, who became my wife. It was in '81. And then the third person was I was really terrified for years of meeting that person, and I was kind of hoping that I would never meet that person. Mainly because the one thing I knew about by the dreams and how everything was linked was that when I met this person, certain events would start occurring, and where I'd had a time of rest, really. I mean, I have things happening to me, but the things that I had dreamed about that I kind of feared, some things were uh, troubling. Some things were beautiful, incredible. Um, so it created a conflict in my heart. You wanted the good, but boy, you didn't want the bad. And so I kind of, if I never met that person, then these things aren't true and they're not going to happen. And uh, I can get off this treadmill, if you would. And anyway, I did end up meeting that person, and they read my mail, which I had. They got a download, told me what was going on in my life, and that was the first what I would call prophetic experience, where somebody was sharing their heart with me that God had showed them. And part of it was the fact that I had a lot of things going on that I wasn't discussing, and God wanted me to talk about it, get it out in the open. There were things that He wanted to do in my life with part of who I was and stuff, and I was closed up, and this person kind of helped open me up. And then another guy I knew, his name was John, and John and I were doing business in Kansas City, and he knew of a church that dealt a lot with dreams and visions and stuff, and he wanted me to go there and talk to them. And so he said he made an arrangement for me to go, and I talked to him. I went with him, the Metro people, and Michael there, and a couple of guys, and shared with them my story, and they seemed to think that they could help me, and understood where I was coming from, and they had a lot of people in their fellowship who were going through the same thing, and that was an overwhelming thing for me to start experiencing other people, and it helped me open up so I could talk to other people. And when we did eventually move there, it was the greatest thing about that place was that there were hundreds of people that experienced things like I was experiencing, and we could share and talk about it and how we were dealing with it and so on. So, but anyway, I met with them, and I went home, told my wife, and we decided to go to a conference. And in July that year, we went to a conference, and while I was standing in the church building, I realized all of a sudden I was in the dream, the one I'd had with the 4 times where the guy was talking, and I was like, wow, this is that place of that dream. And then I wonder that guy's here, and I wonder if he's here, and I instantly knew that guy's here, and I knew he was sitting behind me, and so I turned around real slow and saw him. There was a man sitting there in a wheelchair, and that was the guy, and I looked back up, and from my point of view, it was like that guy had an important message, and that was kind of why I was there. And so I prayed. I said, wow, should I go introduce myself to this person, find out who he is or whatever? And the Lord said no. He said, I'm going to bring it about a different way. So I didn't say anything to him. I left. We came back to Montana, but by October that year we had decided to move. Excuse me, by September we had decided to move to Kansas City and go under the teachings there of the church and try to learn what we could and so on and so forth. So we went there. We moved to Kansas City and got involved with a home group. It was led by a guy named Gary who did a phenomenal job dealing with people that were dealing with these kind of issues and stuff, and just really helped both Lori and I understand what we were going through and how to learn and how to walk in your gifts and stuff. And I got invited to go at the university to do a prayer table. We were going to do prophetic prayer and just pray for kids, and we had a book table, and whoever wanted to sit down, could sit down and get prayer. It was in an open forum. There were a lot of other booths and different things going on. And so I went up to do that, and I went into the student union, and I had another event before that. I had prayed, Lord, send 10,000 angels. And when we got to the student union, I looked up in the building, and there were angels standing toe to toe, and I was like, what's going on? And I didn't connect till later, a couple of days later, that I had prayed for 10,000 angels. So that was a weird event. But anyway, so I go into the student union, I walk out the back door of the student union, and I walk into one of my 10 dreams. And I was just floored. And the guy that was with me, Scott, he of course, I'm always internalizing a lot, and because I've had to live that way. So this was a process of trying to break out of that a little. And I hadn't said a word, and Scott said, what happened? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, man, he says, you're lit up. He said, the Lord just fell on you. You're just lit up. He said, what's going on? And I said, well, I walked into a dream I had, And he said, really? He says, and I said, yeah, I dreamed of this place. I said, I know this place like the back of my hand. I've dreamed of it so many times. He said, really? Well, what's here? And so I told him about the buildings and some of that, the way the land went, and I mean, just all kinds of things. And he said, well, let's walk around. And so we walked around and kind of, we confirmed it. I mean, it was just all there. And so we went back to do the book table, and we prayed for kids that came through, and that was awesome. God showed up, and I remember one kid who the Lord told me he had rebelled against his parents, but rightfully so. And I remember that, how it started, but eventually what we found out was that he had gone into engineering and was ready to graduate, and had decided not to be an engineer but to go into the ministry. And he was having a horrible time knowing what to say to his dad. And that particular event gave him the verbiage he needed and the confidence to go home and tell his dad that he was going to go into the ministry. That was a very interesting. So there were some events like that. There's some other ones, but anyway,